Who doesn't love theme parks? Even if you're not there for the roller coasters or other intense attractions, you can still walk around, grab some delicious food for a bit of a higher price, and enjoy a good time with your family and friends. But there is one chain of theme parks that has created a lot of controversy due to the way they handle things. I'm of course talking about Seaworld and how people began to question the way they handle animals. Today we're going to be looking at 10 things you may not know about Seaworld. I'm sure by now you already have some idea of the things that made this park so controversial, but there are some other things you might not know. I must warn you though, this video provides revealing information that might trigger sadness or anger, so watch at your own risk. But I do hope that by the end of it you decide to do something about animals that need help, especially after you hear what's at the top of this list. With all that said and done, let's begin, shall we? Number 10. Failure to provide proper animal care. There are 3 major SeaWorld parks, one in Orlando, one in San Diego, and one in San Antonio. As a US-based company that deals with animals, they have to comply with a lot of regulations set by the US Department of Agriculture. But back in 2012, the USDA issued a warning to SeaWorld San Antonio because the park didn't have proper drain covers to minimize the risk of animal entrapment. This irresponsible act led to the death of a sea lion. Later in 2013, the USDA had to conduct further investigations after one child got bitten by a dolphin. When the authorities came, they noticed that the park was using surgical material that was already expired. Also, the dolphin tank and the orcas space were in terrible shape. In them were rusty beams and cracked concrete that could not only hurt the animals but also the workers. The crumbling concrete could potentially fall in the pools and be ingested by the animals, which would of course be very bad for their health. Sure enough, the animals' performances look great in the eyes of the visitors, but many of them don't know all the bad things that happen when no one is around. Number 9. The use of black zinc oxide. You have to keep in mind that orcas in the wild spend a lot of time away from the sun, but at SeaWorld they barely get any time in the shade. Instead, they spend endless hours on the surface, constantly being exposed to the light of the sun. This is a drastic change, considering that their natural habitat is the deep ocean and they only spend 5% of their days near the surface. The deepest tank at SeaWorld is only 40 feet deep, which is not enough for them to cool off after a hot day under the sun. This has caused the orcas to develop painful sunburns, which the park doesn't want you to see. For that reason, the park staff uses black zinc oxide, which perfectly matches with the orca's skin. The good thing is that black zinc oxide can act as a sunblock, but the bad thing is that most of the time they use this after the animals have already been affected by the sun, so there's not much help that can be done. Number 8. Some of the orcas were kidnapped. Have you ever wondered how the animals end up in zoos or in places like SeaWorld? Supposedly, these places exist to provide shelter to animals that were in danger while in the wild. But that is not always the case with the orcas at SeaWorld. It was reported that at least 5 of them were kidnapped from their homes in the ocean. One of these orcas, Tilikum, was only 2 when it was captured by what they call a marine cowboy. Tilikum was not injured or in any sort of immediate danger. He was part of a bigger family, and he was taken away to a confined and small tank, all so they could just make money out of him. It seems like SeaWorld has done some questionable things just to get a hold of whales. And while the kidnapping of whales is very saddening, it doesn't come close to the next thing on this list. Number 7. Some orcas got killed. Back in 1965, a lot of people were amused when they witnessed the first orca show at SeaWorld. It was performed by the famous whale Shamu in San Diego, California. But what many people don't know is the story of Shamu and how she got captured. And once you learn the story, you might not want to support any whale shows ever again. When Shamu was captured, a marine cowboy named Ted Griffin shot Shamu's mom with a harpoon and killed her right in front of the little whale's eyes. Later on, Don Goldsberry, who was Griffin's partner, started to work for SeaWorld, and they asked him to bring more orcas into the park. This led him to continue the kidnapping and slaughtering of innocent orcas. It was also revealed that he went to extreme measures, such as hiring divers to slit open the bellies of 4 orcas and fill them with rocks so they could sink to the bottom of the ocean without anyone finding out about their deaths. Number 6. Forced breeding. Just like any other animal, orcas choose their life partner, or partners, to breed and create families. However, it seems like the rules of nature don't matter at SeaWorld. Apparently, the park forces the whales to breed on a regular basis. In order to do that, they have trained the male whales to float on their backs so the trainers can stimulate the whale's private parts and collect the sperm. On the other hand, females are artificially inseminated and get to start breeding whenever the park authorities think it's fine, which is at a much younger age than they would normally do if they were in the wild. The most famous of them all is the whale named Katina, who was brought all the way from Iceland to Seaworld, Orlando. She's some sort of breeding machine, and she's known as the most successful whale to be able to breed while in captivity. Number 5. Captivity shortens the lifespan of orcas. Orcas are known to live for a very long time, actually. Their average life expectancy in the wild is between 30 to 50 years. But in fact, males sometimes can live up to 60 or 70 years, and females can live up to 80, and sometimes even longer than 100. But sadly, that is not the case for whales in captivity. It's been proven that the median life expectancy inside those tanks is only 9 years. Depending on your definition of lucky, males can live up to 17 years and females up to 29. That's almost nothing compared to all those whales who live freely in the wild. But whale captivity doesn't only happen at Seaworld. There are other parks and centers around the world that have whales, and when you put them all together, half of the whales in these places die by the time they're 6 years old. Number 4. Unsafe for trainers. I'm sure you knew about this prior to watching this video. Seaworld is not a safe place for trainers. There are tons of videos online and even award-winning documentaries that narrate the awful stories of how trainers have been hurt by whales and other animals while working at Seaworld. The most famous of these stories is the one of Dawn Branchu, who was a senior trainer at Seaworld Orlando when she got killed by an orca in 2010. The event was shocking, not only because it happened in front of a lot of visitors, but because it happened to someone who had spent a ton of time with the whales and who obviously trusted them. In the blink of an eye, the whale named Tilikum, which I already told you about, pulled Branchal by the arm and drowned her. A lot of the staff started throwing food in the pool and doing all sorts of things to distract the whale, but Tilikum was too fast and had already ended the life of his trainer. This awful event fueled people to speak up against the park, and it served to remind us that perhaps this is not the best space for whales and that they're better off in the wild, without any trainers. Number 3. Performers, not biologists. When you look at what happened to people like Dawn and the other 100 people who have gotten injured by animals at these parks, you begin to wonder about their background. After all, if they were genuine biologists, things would have been a bit different. Unfortunately, most of the trainers at the park don't have any proper training in marine biology. Surely, they're friendly and they get along with the animals, and they know how to cheer up the crowds, but they don't really know much about animal behavior. Their main purpose is to entertain. If you pay close attention to what they say, you'll realize they're just saying the right things to keep everyone happy, or facts that a lot of people already know. But they don't talk much about how orcas are very social animals, or about their intelligence, or their actual lifespan. If they actually knew these things, then the park wouldn't have any whales, or at least not in the conditions that they already do. Don't blame the performers, though. Most of them were there just because they loved these animals. Now it's time for the day's best pick. I'm sorry if I'm ruining SeaWorld for you, but you also had Blackfish and several other documentaries to do that for you. I just can't stand animal suffering, and I know a lot of you will find these facts interesting. And the thing with animal suffering is that sometimes we don't see it right away. It takes some deep research to find out about all of these things, but the picture I chose for today shows one of the orcas at SeaWorld, with a very peculiar trait. It has a collapsed dorsal fin, and according to experts, this is not normal. Number 2. Collapsed dorsal fins are not normal. There are a lot of orcas at SeaWorld that have collapsed dorsal fins. In fact, it's been revealed that all male orcas have this kind of fin, and this is actually an indicator of an unhealthy orca. But if you ask people at SeaWorld, they'll tell you that this is normal and that it happens all the time in the wild. However, research has shown that only 1 to 5% of wild orcas develop this collapsed dorsal fin. In fact, there are full populations of orcas in the wild that don't have this problem at all. Obviously, captivity plays an important role in this, even if they tell us otherwise. Before we move on, I've got a little challenge for you that'll take 5 seconds to complete. So here's the deal. You just leave a like on this video, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell, and you will get 25 years of amazing luck. Try it really works. Number 1. Animals suffer in cramped facilities. Cramped spaces produce a lot of stress for anyone. Let's be honest, we all need our personal space, and we could easily lose our mind if we don't feel free. And this principle doesn't only apply to humans, it also applies to animals. But sadly, it seems like some people didn't have this in mind when they built the facilities for the animals at Seaworld. It had been reported that the whales and dolphins at Seaworlds are kept in tanks that to them must feel like a bathtub. This is quite uncomfortable and shocking if you consider the fact that these animals can swim hundreds of miles per day when they're in the wild. At the park, they have no tides, no waves, just a boring pool that can barely fit them. It's really no wonder some orcas got violent against some of their trainers. After all, stress gets the worst of us, so there's no way we can't blame the whales for the awful accidents that went on. Thanks to the efforts of many organizations and individuals, Seaworld has started to take some action toward making this right. First of all, they're not going to be bringing more orcas into their parks. Also, as of December of 2019, they no longer do their famous One Ocean Orca show in Orlando and San Antonio. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it's definitely the start of redemption for a park that's been surrounded by so much controversy. How do you feel about all of this? Any ideas on how we can help the orcas and other animals at Seaworld? Let us know in the comments section down below. With all that said and done, I will see you all next time. Later, everybody.